how's it going?
Going good, Tej. How are you today?
Today is good. You've got me, so it's 11 a.m. in Melbourne.
So, Tej, November 28th, you put up your EP, The Stories We're Afraid of Volume 1. So, would you like to tell me a bit about the songwriting and production behind this new EP?
Well, so the songwriting began right at the beginning of the pandemic, actually. Funnily enough, a lot of artists, I feel like, and bands, obviously we couldn't tour when
Mm.
the whole world shut down. So what do other creatives do? We just hunker down and write music. And so it was cool to see a lot of bands and artists, go to live streaming and doing all these stuff to get their music out there. And it kind of just goes to show that, creatives and musicians, although in, in really tough situations, still are able to think creatively and find new avenues to be able to share their art, which was really inspirational for me
Mm.
as a songwriter myself, just seeing all these other creatives think of cool ways to use, either TikTok, Instagram, using social media, using obviously the internet and being having a global audience to be able to release and do music. So I was super inspired, and we had our own restrictions. Obviously in Melbourne, I'm not too sure if you heard, but Melbourne was like one of the most longest locked down
Yeah.
cities in the world, which is nuts. It was
Mm.
like over 100 days in our homes. And it was in Melbourne as well. There was like a period where we couldn't leave a 5 kilometer radius.
Yeah.
There was a curfew. So if you're out past 9 p.m. or something, like they'll tell you to go back home, like police. It was nuts. To think of it now,
Mm.
at the time, we're like, oh, okay, whatever. But to think of it now, it just sounds crazy, man. So, but yeah, so a lot of this stuff was written in that time. So being the main songwriter, Ben, our vocalist, also writes music. Dave, our drummer, he's a great arranger. He knows he can visualize a song really well, whereas I can't visualize a song until I have all the parts and they kind of make sense. And then I go, okay, let's fix this bit and let's do this and make a transition here. But Dave, our drummer, he tends to see it as a whole and sees a good direction. So he's kind of like the conductor
Mm.
almost, and I'm just kind of like the music producer. I just vomit music, and he just sifts through it. Goes, now that shit, that shit, that shit. Now this is all right. Let's work on that. I'm like, yeah, cool. All right, let's work on that. But that's how he usually would work.
Mm.
And also with Ben as well, he's throwing in ideas and music ideas and vocal ideas and stuff. But because of the lockdowns, we couldn't all be in the same room. So we had to find ways to do it. So I looked into Zoom and audio movers and different apps and stuff to be able to stream and record music live over the internet. It was difficult. And so what we ended up doing was I write and produce everything because I'm a audio engineer as well. So I'll record it all, whether it be just sections, a riff here, a riff there, different tempo, different idea, and then we'll get together weekly, and then I'll present all my ideas, and then we'll kind of go, yeah, let's use that and connect it with that one. I'll write all the notes, I write it all down, or write it down in my notes, and then I'll go away for the rest of the week, and then work on all the suggestions that the other dudes made, and then I'll upload it onto like a Dropbox or a Google Drive, or email it, just a mix of it, and just yeah, and we'll go that way. So it was a different way of writing, but at the same time, it yielded different results because, as we do with every album, what I like to do personally is to write uh, an album or write music starting on a different instrument every time.
Yeah.
So, like the first album was predominantly written on guitar. The second album, I wrote a lot of it on bass, and this one I wrote mostly with the computer with no instruments. And that was the challenge for me. Is let's see if I can write an album without using an instrument, like everything in the box.
Mm.
So it started off with a lot of samples. I'd use my machine pad and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Um, Obviously use guitars as well eventually, but the ideas to challenge myself, I would write on the thing. And so a lot of the ideas came from um, more about a feeling and a story rather than what sounds good or what's a cool riff. So I would watch, say, a movie
Mm.
or a TV series, and I think at the time I was watching, I think I was rewatching Game of Thrones or something. something really epic, you know. So like a lot of these songs are quite cinematic in a way, because I was watching these things and I was like, that's a cool scene. And then I'll hear that music and be really dramatic with like, you know, big string orchestras and big toms and timpanis and explosions and all that shit. So I'm like, this is sick. This is making me feel excited. Like something big is going to happen. Like there's a big fight happening. And I wanted to capture that feeling. So especially on that first song, Wonder, I wrote a piece to this Netflix show called The Age of Samurai, which is like a historic reenactment of different clans in Japan and how they used to fight against each other. And I was watching that, and so I ripped it, just the video, put it into my DAW, which is Cubase, and then no audio, no music, and then I'll watch that on loop, and then I'll kind of write or play keys or whatever, bring samples in to capture the mood of it. And then once I've captured the mood, then I'll get rid of the visual, and then I'll write music to the mood. And so Wonder starts off from this kind of almost like call to arms. It's almost like, let's, you know, all this shit's happening. Everyone's, you know, struggling with like anxieties and like the social aspect of being locked down and all that kind of stuff, and not being able to express yourself about wanting to go outside and see your friends and family and stuff. And so that song is almost like a call to arm to say, hey, you know, there is beauty and wonder in the world, therefore getting called Wonder. Don't always, there's always things that are going to be coming at you, but always remember that within yourself you have the power to change how you feel and how you perceive the world. And so basically that's where that song came about. But yeah, sorry for the long-winded answer. I tend to do that. I just, you put me on a thing and I'll just go. So please interrupt me.
And is there any particular concept or a theme that was put behind this EP?
Yeah, so we call this this particular EP, Volume 1, The Stories We Are Afraid of. It's almost like I see creativity to be an expression of vulnerability. And so, especially because I'm quite an introvert, I'm not very loud, and I might not seem that way now. Because it's a one-on-one, I much prefer talking to someone one-on-one rather than in a big party atmosphere or a lot of people, like, which is funny because I play in front of a lot of people when I perform. It's a bit strange, but I'm quite an introverted person. So like, I feel like the way I express myself and my innermost fears, doubts, and all those important things, I express that through the music, and that's my cathartic experience. It's like I let go of all of that anxiety through the music. So that's why a lot of those songs started that way, and I wanted to capture that feeling. And so the result of that was, you know, all of these stories that usually we might be afraid to talk about, I feel like the music allows it to happen. So hopefully the listeners can decode a lot of the music and the lyrics and stuff to hopefully in turn help them release their kind of fears and anxieties too. Like that's the main mission statement of that EP. It's like, it happened in this really crazy time and it really highlighted a lot of people's anxieties and fears. Let's use this as a vehicle for people to be able to kind of go, okay, someone else feels the same way, I'm not alone, let's get through this together. So that's the feeling behind it.
Fantastic. And talking about the EP, 6 amazing songs, beautifully written, great musicianship, amazing progression, entirely a beautiful album, to be honest with you. Thank you so much for this amazing music. And as a band, what are your thoughts and how did you feel about the outcome of this one?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thanks for such a kind words, man. I really appreciate that, because it's a thing when you're alone with your, well, for me, because I was writing a lot of this alone and I live alone as well, and I spent over 100 days by myself alone, you start to get a bit weird. But yeah, I'm glad that it translated, and And yeah, thanks for the kind words, man. Like, I really appreciate that. And when someone actually acknowledges something that you've worked a lot of, spent a lot of time working on, it's really humbling and it's great. So I appreciate that. So what was the second half of the question again?
What are your thoughts on this EP, and how do you
Oh,
feel about the outcome?
man, the outcome I'm really proud of, because we wrote it, like I mentioned, in a completely different way to how we have been writing. It was a big accomplishment, me personally, because I proved to myself that I could write music on my own without having my brothers there to help me. Although they did, have a big part in this album, like we all worked together on it. It wouldn't be the same without everyone's input. But what it showed me personally was, I could achieve a vision that I have in my head and um, reproduce it sonically. And I used to be not afraid of it. I used to be a bit doubtful of whether I could do it previously. It's like, yeah, I could write these songs, but I've never written something from start to finish that I'm going, yeah, it's complete. I'm done. Whereas with this stuff, I felt like it was a more cohesive um, product. It's very refined. Like a lot of our previous songs, we had like a 6-minute prog epic, and then our first album we had these riff mania songs where it's just all guitar work, and which is great, and I love it. But this is more expressive. It feels a lot more deeper than the previous albums, and because they're short, I guess, pop structured songs, because I'm a huge fan of pop music. I just went to see 5 Seconds of Summer. I saw Dua Lipa not too long ago. Like, I love that stuff. But I also love Meshuggah. So um, having these 3 to 4 minute maximum songs, but being able to put everything that I've learned musically and in production as well, to cram it all in there into like a 3.5 or 4 minute song was an achievement in itself for me. And I think it doesn't sound like a, a supreme pizza. It doesn't sound like you've just chucked all the ingredients in and go, there you go. It's got ingredients where it should be, like things on the top, and then underneath that layer there's a nice layer of, like, prosciutto, and there's a nice level of tomato sauce and base for it. And then you, at the very bottom, you've got this drums and bass, which is just like the pizza dough. Everything's layered very well. And when you take a bite of that song or that pizza, you can taste every single layer without it being mushed into one big ball. So that was an achievement for me, and I really spent a lot of time on the actual production of it. So like a lot of the audio side, like the riffs, I wasn't too fussed about. We had this the rest of the band and myself, we were kind of talking about how we want to take this next direction, and we said we all agreed that we want it to be short, concise, but cohesive, and really dialing back on the tech stuff. Like, who cares if you can do a million notes at once, or who cares if you can do cool ghost notes and play in weird time signatures? It's like, let's just simplify it. Let's put the complexity into the layering, not the musicality. Let's put the complexity in the lyrics, the layering of the lyrics. Let's put the complexity in where all the samples are and where they're placed in the stereo field according to the lyrics, because we do a lot of stuff, what we call like text painting. So there's a song called Echo, and in the first sentence he says the word echo, and I'll put a little actual effect, an echo effect, just on that word. And if he says something that's uplifting, or if he says the word down or something, I would tune the guitar down, or like, things like that normally you probably wouldn't notice, the regular listener wouldn't notice. But if you do a deep dive, and if I gave you a list of all the things that are all interconnected in terms of production and vocals, you will see so many things that are connected. And I feel like whether the audience hears it or not, I think as a whole, you will subconsciously feel it rather than hear it. And I'm not expecting any listener to pick up on all these things, but if you are a keen listener, you might pick up on those things and go, you know what, that's pretty cool. They're the things that I love hearing. It's like hearing in some music, and if someone does something like that, I'm like, I see what they did there. That's cool. Like, oh, that's cool songwriting. That's cool production stuff. It's things that you wouldn't. It's not so much in your face. It's not like someone tells you a joke and tells you the punchline before you get, before you finish the joke. It's like you tell the joke, you laugh, and then a day later you go, oh, it's hilarious. I get it. I love those kind of albums. So that's why, we spent a lot of time on that.
Amazing, amazing. And did you guys do something special on the day of the release on November 28th?
Man, to be honest, I didn't even know it was released. For me, because I spent so much time writing it, because I recorded everything, because we're in lockdown. So I was just literally in this room with my guitar, and then would go to a different room just to do vocals. And sometimes Ben will record vocals at his house and then send me the files, and I'll drop it in. But yeah, that made it pretty difficult for sure. Yeah.
Interesting. And do you guys have plans for a touring probably by early 2023?
Yes. So we're in negotiation at the moment. We're definitely going to do a tour in support of the EP for sure. Just a domestic national one in Australia. Man, touring is tough at the moment. And even the bigger bands that obviously have a bigger fan base, they're struggling. I read an article the other day about, do you know Devin Townsend?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I read an article with him, and he's very transparent with that stuff. That's why I love Devin. He doesn't, what we call beat around the bush. He doesn't muck around. He tells it exactly how it is.
Yeah.
And he's right. It's like, if you want to put on a good show, because as an artist, you want to present your work live in the best way possible, right? And to do that, you do need production. You do need good lighting. You need, these days everyone's bringing CO2, those big, cannons and like pyro and all this extra production. And then not only that, you've got your sound guy. And so you end up and you have a tech, like you have people that do your guitar tech or your drum tech. You have a playback tech. So at any tour, even on our level, which is, we're not that as Devin's up there, you know what I mean? And even he is struggling to get his crew and even just to break even. He's losing money if he goes on tour, which sucks. And as much as he wants to tour, he just can't, because if he does that a couple of times in a row, he'll be broke and he won't be able to write any more music, and it's just the way of the world right now. So logistics is almost double, your trucking, your buses, or the venue high's gone up, all that stuff, inflation, all of it's gone up. The flights are ridiculous. The flights are easily double now. That means it's doubled all your costs, not only for you, but your crew. And you got to pay your crew. The crews actually, their rates have also gone up because a whole bunch of people have left the industry since COVID. I think a big chunk, like a good 30-40% of the tech crew world has left, therefore leaving only a certain amount of talented or good hardworking crew members that still stuck around. And so because they're in such high demand, the only way you can get them is to pay more than their other work, right? Otherwise, why would you leave? And so it gets more expensive. So it's really hard. But we're doing our best. Our last tour, we definitely lost money on it, and I don't care. I don't care telling you this stuff because it's the truth, And I think audiences, especially, fans and stuff, it's good to know what the artist actually goes through, because one, it helps them understand, and two, it also shows that it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. And why do we do it? Because we love doing it, and that's the only way we can express ourselves, right? Or it's the best way we can express ourselves, and to keep our kind of mental health on track as well. And I love doing it. I love going to shows and playing, and then talking to the punters afterwards to know what's going on in their lives. It's not like, oh, come see us and I'll sign your CD and we'll get a photo. It's not. I don't care about that, which is nice. Obviously, I'll do all the things, but what I enjoy most is hearing about their lives. It's like, what made you listen to our music? What else do you listen to? And then we'll start talking about bands that we both like. Therefore, it just becomes a conversation rather than a meet and greet. You know what I mean? So I love doing that. So shows is great. but it's getting harder and harder to tour. So we're just considering our budget at the moment, and how much we can afford to take in terms of crew and stuff like, and our production level. And because our last tour was great, and we brought our own lighting guy and our lights and a really good front of house tour manager. We had a really, really good crew, but again, it costs money, and we lost money on the last one, so we can't afford to do it again. So we have to either, one, cut cities out, which sucks because we want to go to all the cities, and two, we might have to cut back on some of the production, but it's like we can't go backwards. You know what I mean? We can't go, here's a new EP, and then there's no lights. You know, it just sucks. So, but yeah, hopefully, we most likely will. We most likely will do a tour. We're looking at one international tour at the moment. We can't say where yet, but it just all depends. Like it's all moving parts all the time. It's like this happens, but this has to happen at the same time. So you've got to shuffle stuff around to make sure things fit under budget. It's like, okay, how many pieces are we taking overseas? Like, how much is it going to cost? How much is the freight? Are we going to get it back? What if the flight's delayed? We've got to make sure there's 2 days before the first show, just in case if if this gear doesn't get there. Are there any higher places? Just say if we go to Germany or something, it's like, are there any gear higher places in Germany that have what we require at that time, just in case if the freight doesn't get there? So there's so many moving parts that it takes a long time to finally lock it all in, and then get sign off on the budget and everything. So but yeah, long story short, yes, we want to tour.
Good. And Circles formed way back in 2010. It's 12 years now. So how has the road been for you guys so far?
Well, that's holy shit. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. We're one of those bands that we've been DIY right from the start. We were signed to a UK label, Basic Records, which obviously it was a huge step for us to get international recognition for one. It's like who the hell? Which is a funny story, because like we got emailed by the guy who runs Basic at the time, Nathan Barley Phillips, who's gone on to bigger and better things now. But at the time, he hit us up and was like, "Hey, we're interested in signing you guys. You want to have a quick, Skype chat?" At first, I thought it was one of our mates pulling a joke. It was like, "Yeah, whatever, mate. Yeah, it's all good. Thanks." And then he actually called one of our phones, because our phone number was on our Facebook page. Not for long, but it was there. And so I got a call, and it's this guy with this English accent, this British accent. I'm like, oh, maybe it isn't my mate. So it ended up being real, and so we got someone Basic. So that definitely was a huge step for us, and that put us on like an international stage, which was great, and a lot of contacts through them as well. So we've obviously knew a lot of the UK bands and stuff that were emerging at the time, like Tesseract and Monuments, obviously Periphery from the States, and other bands here and there, like Textures, but even a bit before them. But Textures, I was a huge fan of theirs, and those kind of bands. So it was great to be put in the vicinity, in that neighborhood, and that really helped us a lot. So that was cool. We got a lot of opportunities to that most bands, I guess local bands, wouldn't have had back then. The only downside to that is that we didn't build a big fan base in Australia first. And I think that was a big mistake. So because we're a DIY band, we do everything. We always go into situations not knowing anything. We just don't know. We've never done it before. It's the same like with international touring. So if someone came up to you and says, "Hey, you're touring Europe, next month, go organize it," you'd be like, well, "Where the hell do I start? Do I get a van? Like, where do I hire a van from? I need to make sure passport. Do I need to do visas? What countries visas? Like, how do I get into this country?" Like, and 3 of the band members have never left the country before. They've never traveled before. So it's just like, we don't know anything, man. Like, how do we do any of this? And so we basically tour manage ourselves. So I guess our story is everything we've done, we've messed up. And then we do it again, and then try not to make the same mistake. So although we're very proud of our achievements, I feel like if we had a mentor or someone that knew what they were doing, we probably could have gone further. But at the same time, who knows? We could have been taken advantage of. Like, we've heard horror stories about managers and tour managers who take bands on and then they just get screwed over and then they have to start from the start again, you know? So we're very independent in that sense. We were doing very much ourselves. We're managed, self-managed. We manage our own tours. We manage our own logistics. And, you know, just by me talking about all this stuff, it probably shows that we've made all those mistakes before, you know? So it's been a really good, it's been a fun ride for sure, because I get to experience, no matter how big you get, I reckon, like, I guarantee you've probably talked to a lot of massive bands that are always looking for the next thing.
Yep.
Like, no matter how far you go, there's the next thing. It's like, oh, we just played Sydney, we've played in a different state, and go, all right, let's play Queensland. Oh, we've played Australia now. Oh, let's go overseas. And you go overseas, it's like, oh, let's play arenas now. Let's play bigger. You know, there's always something more. So for me personally, I'm quite content with our successes, our experiences. Like, I know lots of friends of mine that would gladly be in a lot of debt if they could experience what we did. Like, we get to play music to people on the other side of the world that don't even speak English. It blows my mind. And it's happened. Like, we've played in crazy places where I thought I'll never go, like Slovenia. Like, we played in Bratislava and in Eastern Europe, really far that way. And I was like, when would I ever thought when I was 16 that I'll be in Slovenia or something, you know, and playing music and people turning up?
Yeah.
It blows my mind. Even if there's like 2 people there, I'm the happiest guy on earth, because it's like, man, you're here, you're listening to our music. And we had this funny experience after the show in Bratislava. We were there, the bus wasn't leaving, or we weren't leaving until the next day. So we had, you know, a bit of a party afterwards, and really broken English, and we're trying to communicate through, you know, hand gestures. And like this guy brought in like a homemade cherry vodka. It's like, oh, I made it at home. I'm like, oh no, man. He goes, oh, have a shot. I smelt it. So it smells delicious. It smells like cherries. So I had some of that, like, it burnt all the way down. And then the rest of the night, it was just loose. We just got super drunk. Everyone's laughing and singing. And it's just like, this is the beauty of, you know, music. And even though we don't know each other, we're complete strangers, we can't even communicate through language very well. But at the end of the night, we were buddies. We were putting sugar on in the van and we were moshing, and like, it was the funnest thing ever. So it's been a really fun ride, and I never thought I'd be able to experience these things when I was 15 or 16, listening to Metallica at my parents' house, you know, air drumming, you know. I never thought that would happen. So I'm very, very grateful that we've had, you know, these experiences. So yeah, very, very stoked.
Interesting. And how is the situation with the band in Australia now? So do you get a lot of attention now in Australia?
Not as much as you think. like I said, I feel like we're a bit more, I guess, more of a novelty overseas. In Australia, we're just kind of like, oh, it's just another Australian band, you know, whatever. I mean, it'll be nice to get some more recognition here, but it's kind of, you know, we can't complain. It's not like I can't sit here and be angry at the internet. You know, I mean, it's the internet's the internet. So, and the people that do come to our shows love it. So that's where my attention goes. Like, I rarely don't think about the what ifs, or like, oh, I wish we could do this, or I wish people would know us better. It's like, well, it's their choice. Like, and if they haven't heard of us, it's our job to make them hear us, you know. So I can't be mad at people not coming to our shows or not knowing who we are. It's completely up to them. And if they haven't heard it, it's an algorithm. It's, you know, and it's our duty or our responsibility to put effort into having our music out there. So if I wanted that, that means I just need to work harder. That's all it is. But yeah, we definitely have a lot of fans in Australia, obviously, home country, and I love playing Australia. It's where I live. It's where I've grown up. So it's always a good time.
Interesting. And what will be the next plan for Circles?
Next plan, obviously, the volume 2. It's in the works for sure. It's exciting because now that we're a little bit out, I mean, we've got ideas. There's plenty of songs there to be worked on. I think we're very close. But there's that. I'm excited about the tour. If we can do one more, I'd like to tick off will be like a festival run in Europe or something.
Yeah.
I'd love to do Southeast Asia. I'd love to tour Japan. My parents are Japanese, so I'd love to go there and play a show. That'd be great. Yeah, I mean, anywhere. I'll play anywhere, man. Really? Ask me to go to Antarctica. I'll play there, man. It'll be an
Metallica.
experience. Exactly. Metallica did it, so that means we can do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful.
We might need their budget. We might need some Metallica budget. I'll call up Lars on the phone and say, hey Lars, just swing us a couple of mil. We'll go down to Antarctica and put on a show to nobody.
Yeah. Yes, fantastic.
That'd be great.
And I know there has been a lot of great things that has happened over the years, but is there something special that you want to share with me today?
Oh, something special. In terms of the band stuff?
The band, yeah.
Yeah. Man, all of them are. Hey, for me, every show, every interaction is a gift. So I can't. It's kind of hard. There's a few that do stand out to me though. One was definitely this festival called Euroblast, and I think that was in 2013. Our first ever international tour, and that was and we were supporting the Dillinger Escape Plan, which is, oh yeah, clearly. I wasn't like, I was a fan before we played with them, but after we toured with them, I became a fan, like, holy shit fan, you know? And I understand why Dillinger Escape Plan fans are crazy. I'm like, I get it. This is nuts. And then, so we did a few dates with them. They continued on the tour. We went off and did our own headline shows in the UK, and then a festival in Euroblast to start it off. And so with Euroblast, the headliner for the Euroblast was Meshuggah, and Meshuggah probably one of my favorite bands ever, as a lot of people, I assume, in our genre. And to be able to support my childhood dream band was huge. And not only that, there were a friend of ours band, 12 Foot Ninja, and another band, Dead Letter Circus, who are good. They're both from Australia. We've toured with them before. We're good friends with them. And to be overseas and then walking into, so we've been touring with Dillinger Escape Plan for like 13 shows or something. So we're on our own, in our own van, you know, it was just kind of us against the world kind of feeling. But as soon as we got to Euroblast and we left the Dillinger tour, we got to Euroblast and we're like, all right, guys, we're headlining now. We've got to, you know, make sure that everything's sweet. We get there, we get shown to our backstage, our green room. And on the door, I've taken a photo of it somewhere. On the door, it had the bands that the green room shares. It said Dead Letter Circus, 12 Foot Ninja, and Circles. It's like, oh, they put all the Aussies together, you know? So I remember opening the door, and you know, if you've ever been traveling overseas, either on your own or with a partner or a friend or whatever, but when you meet up, if you just happen to see friends overseas, it's just such a big occasion, because obviously at home you see your friends, whatever. But when you're overseas, it's such a big thing. And so being alone for that long and then seeing your friends and opening that door and seeing all your friends in one room and going, hey, and like, oh, we're overseas. This is crazy. Because this is the thing that we've all been dreaming about. You know, when we were teenagers, we were like, we'd tell our friends, it's like, oh, it'd be sick to like play overseas and like play a big stage. And it's like, we were there. We were overseas in Germany, in Cologne, at this festival, supporting one of my favorite bands ever. Their headline, Meshuggah, and then two of our friends' bands that we've toured with in Australia, that we've shared a lot of moments with. It was a dream come true. It's like, I remember telling myself, remember this moment, because you remember this for the rest of your life. And so it was such a fun tour, and a fun moment, fun show. We played, it's probably the biggest crowd we played to, and everyone was there because Euroblast is a very kind of, you know, gent tech metal, progressive metal festival. Everyone there loves all the bands. And so the crowd were just nuts from start to finish. And yeah, it was a crazy feeling, and one that I definitely won't forget. So that's definitely a highlight for me.
Yes, thanks for sharing that. And
Yeah,
Ted,
man.
what would be the message that you want to give to your fans around the world?
Oh man, message is just gratitude. Thank you for giving up your precious time to listening to our bullshit. It's yeah, just to be thank you and keep keep listening to music. Um, keep being vulnerable. Keep your ears open and be curious about music. And thank you. That's all I say.
Yes, yes, fantastic. And Ted, I want to thank you so much for giving me today this wonderful opportunity to have you on this interview. A real pleasure to meet you today. And thank you so much for the amazing music that you've been giving us over the years. Thank you so much for that. We all love you from the metal community out around the world. Thank you so much for that. And I wish you all the best and to the entire band in the coming days. And hope to see you guys on the road real soon.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks again for your kind words, man. Really appreciate it. And thanks for giving up your time too.
My pleasure.
5:30 in the morning, you crazy bastard.
Take care and have a good day ahead. Take care of yourself.
Likewise, my man.
Bye.
Take it easy. See ya.